Well, hello, my lovelies. It's Janet Perez of the Painted Saguaro coming to you again with Paint Couture paints to show you how to turn a $5 junkyard find into a beautiful decor piece for your home. This could be a workstation for homework. It could be a place where you sit down to pay bills. Ugh. It could be anything that you want it to be. This piece came to me as a total basket case. It came literally in 5 pieces. And so that's how I started working on it, because I didn't want to assemble it until after I got the inside of the desk painted and all of the components painted. I started off by washing it really great with Fresh Start, which is the Paint Couture powdered cleaning solution. I mix it with water, put it in a spray bottle, and clean really well. Then I rinse thoroughly with vinegar and water in a spray bottle, let it dry completely. I washed and dried the piece, and then I painted all of the metal with the Paint Couture chalk style paint in Barn Door, which is a fabulous red, and you'll see that in just a minute. Unfortunately, the recording of that portion of this piece did not come through, and I apologize, but it's just painting the metal, and the chalk style paint adheres to that extremely well. I didn't do anything other than clean that metal thoroughly. I scuff sanded it just lightly, but it was so aged and oxidized that it didn't really require anything else at all. So what I'm doing here is I'm putting on the wood portion of this desk, I'm adding Farmhouse linen, which is another chalk style paint, and I'm just giving it a 1 coat coverage onto the wood. You can see I'm kind of stippling in places where it needs to get into like the cracks and crevices, and then I'm just brushing it on with an artist brush along the edges and ledges. Now what I've done here is I've mixed some into a plate, and I added just a few drops of the iron oxide pigment, which is a liquid pigment, and it gives it this sort of brownish pinkish hue, which is what I wanted to give it more of an aged look. So the second coat of the Farmhouse linen has this sort of, like I said, pinkish hue to it. And there you can see the red barn door that I painted the metal with. Now this piece completely transforms, and I'm going to be completely honest with you, it went a completely different direction than I had in my head when I started it. But you're just going to have to kind of walk along with me, because I really am happy with how it turned out. Now this piece of wood here is the bottom slat, so that part that you're looking at right there is the part that goes on the interior, where you will eventually see baskets sitting on, and that red portion of the desk is the interior of the desk itself. So I painted all of that before I assembled everything. And now I'm adding some Extreme Guard flat top coat. This stuff is super durable, it dries super rock hard, and it just gives it the best, toughest hard coat finish you could possibly imagine. And I want to make sure that that interior of that desk is really scratch resistant. So I'm giving this a good coat of that, and before I assemble the bottom of the desk into the edges, and you'll see me slide that in after this top coat dries, and then I'll screw it in, and then we will assemble the legs, which have already been painted the red, because like I said, I painted all of the metal red previous to this recording that you're seeing. So that top coat is completely dry, and I'm sliding that in, and I've already screwed it in now, because you don't need to watch me drill holes, because Janet's not that adept at it, so it takes a little while. And I'm screwing the legs in here, and now the whole piece is assembled. So I'm doing something a little unconventional here, and this was sort of a trial thing, and I'm really happy with the way it turned out. I'm taking the step 1 or part 1 of the Crackle product by Paint Couture, and I'm painting that all over the red paint. And I'm just letting it go 1 coat the same as if you were using the Crackle for the actual Crackle finish. And you can see it's a pretty thorough coat. And I let it dry completely. And you can see once it's dry, it dries completely clear. And now I'm adding a layer of the carbon mineral paint over that Crackle finish. I'm not using Crackle Step 2 here, guys. I'm using just the Crackle Step 1. And you can see I'm kind of touching it. And then I'm using a chip brush to sort of scrape it, the charcoal color or the carbon color back off. And it works as sort of a resist. And when I'm touching it with my hands, I'm sort of pulling the paint back off with my hands. You'll see at some point, especially when I'm doing the legs, I have a lot of paint on my hands because what that Crackle, it really makes sort of a sticky finish on your surface. And so when you touch the wet paint with your hands, it pulls the paint away from the finish and it just acts as a really nice resist. So you can see I'm getting sort of this really kind of cool aged effect on here, and that's what I'm going for with this. So this was the first time I've ever tried this with this product. It was just kind of experimental for me, and I'm really pleased with how it came out because it really gave me that cool edgy sort of industrial rustic look that I was looking for this, because it really is, you know, this is a desk from probably the 50s or 60s. I know when I was a young student in grade school, we sat at these desks and they were old then. So, yeah. So you can see there, you saw my hand. That's what I'm talking about. I'm pulling that paint off with my hand. My hand is acting as the resist on this. And you can see how you can see the red through that carbon color. So it's just giving it sort of a peekaboo effect. And I did that over the entire piece. Now what I've got going on here over the top of the desk is I'm using, and you've seen me use this tool before, it's just a spreader that I bought at Home Depot. And I smear some of the pitch black paint on it. And I've also got a palette knife in my hand, and I'm just smearing pitch black chalk style paint over the top surface of that desk. And I'm doing it very sporadically. I'm using the palette knife to get along the edges and get that kind of chippy look there as well. And I want, 80% coverage. I don't want 100% coverage. So I'm taking my time doing this and just kind of going willy-nilly over it so that I have some of that paint peeking through. Here I'm taking some of that pitch black again and I'm blotting it on a little bit with a paper towel, and then I'm going to take the the palette knife again and sort of spread some on there, because again I'm looking for that industrial look on the side on this metal. I want it to look really rustic and really industrial. Chip brush there, a rag, use whatever tools you have. Use your hands, whatever you feel like you want to use. There's that palette knife, and I'm just kind of spreading, like my words. I'm making words up. It's late tonight, you guys. It's been a long day. But I'm using that palette knife and I'm just spreading it on there and then misting it with my misting bottle to get it kind of runny and smeared. Using my chip brush to sort of spread it down and kind of blend it into the piece. And then using that rag to even wipe it back a little bit more so that there's just sort of a hint of that black to kind of give it that worn, weathered look. And then you'll see next what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab some Moxie by the Sea and some Dark Sea. And I'm going to start painting that on and dripping it and letting it sort of give it a sort of a copper patina look. So I'm using, this is a triangular brush that is available from Paint Couture. It's a really great brush for using for this type of technique. You can get some really nice little points there like I'm getting, and holds a lot of paint, so you don't have to keep going back into your paint jar. Misting away, dragging it down, and then blotting. Using a very light hand. I don't want runs, but I do want drips. So I want the paint to look like it's dripping down, but I don't want runny drips going down, if that makes sense. And what I just did there was I used some more of my iron oxide, and I actually just kind of squirted it onto the side. I got a little heavy-handed with it because it's very concentrated. You only need a tiny little bit, but I wanted it to look really rusty. And that rust color mixed with the kind of turquoise of the Moxie by the Sea mineral acrylic paint, I think makes a beautiful combination of just aging out that metal in a really fantastic way. Misting with my misting bottle to sort of dilute it all and kind of meld it all together. And it's giving me the effect that I want to just age that metal perfectly. And now I'm putting a top coat of that extreme flat top coat on here because I'm going to start adding a transfer from IOD in just a moment. Well, not just a moment, literally, but as far as the video goes, it will be just a moment. But you want to make sure that before you add a transfer, number one, you want to make sure you seal your piece. And number two, you want to make sure that that top coat is completely and totally dry before you start adding your transfer. I typically wait at least 4 hours, at least. I typically try to wait overnight, but I was in a hurry to get this piece done, so I waited about 5 hours on this one. And these IOD transfers go on so nicely and so easily. They are my favorite. I love them. And this is one of their new ones. This is called, hold on, bear with me just a second. If I can find the name of it, I will tell you. It is called the Rose Botanical, and it is from their most recent summer release, and it's really beautiful. I spent a lot of time figuring the layout for these flowers because they all come sort of individually. So you want to make sure you take the time and think out when you have a design that you have to create. You want to think out how you want that design to be laid out on your piece. Because I had the pencil tray up at the top. I had the little inkwell portion at the top. And so I wanted to make sure that everything worked, all the elements worked well together. So I got I believe I used 5 different cuts of the cutouts from this transfer on here. But I really think these roses are beautiful. And I always burnish them a little bit with that transfer paper. It works really well. So what I'm doing here is I'm using 800 grit sandpaper just to sort of slightly age that transfer out a little bit. And you can see it just ages it just the most minuscule amount, simply because that desktop is aged so much. I wanted to make sure that the desk transfer was aged as well. And that's really all there was to the creation of this desk. I hope you enjoyed watching the video, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks for joining me.